Hi and welcome to the Trading Bell Show. I'm glad you have joined us. Now today we have the MD and CEO Kenya Power and Lighting Company, Dr. Joseph Siror, and he's right here because what has happened, they have just launched their strategic plan 2023-2028, and we shall be discussing that and really hope to see you as the customer, what do you expect from the company that serves you. Dr. Siror, it's good to see you and welcome to the show.
My great pleasure, my lord.
Yes. Thank you so much and congratulations first of all on your launch of the strategic plan. What has led to this? Why have you decided that the next 5 years is going to be this, and what should Kenyans expect in your new phase?
Thank you so much, Maina. I'll start by actually saying that there are a number of things like you've asked why we have come to this particular point.
Sure.
The very background of it was the commitment by Kenya Kwanza.
Yeah.
In the manifesto, they were very clear that power and electricity plays a very critical role, even in the development of this nation. And they did identify some of the challenges that Kenya Power is facing. One of them was there was too much government in its operations. And they then agreed and did pronounce themselves in the manifesto that Kenya Power is going to be delinked. The government and the social aspects are going to be delinked from Kenya Power, so that it can run as a commercial company.
Absolutely.
Or run commercially. And true to their word, which I think you know the history of many places, where people can commit certain things in a manifesto.
And they don't happen.
The moment they take power, then something changes. But I think true to their manifesto, I really want to laud the Kenya Kwanza government. Because in May this year, they actually passed a cabinet memo. And this cabinet memo was speaking to the same things they had committed to. One of them is allowing Kenya Power to operate as a commercial entity. And if I may even say, they have actually overdone it. One of the things that, of course, even the lenders were looking at is some aspect of a little say in the board membership. And I do know that one of the promises or one of the commitments that even the World Bank had wanted to look at is possibly one or two board members coming from the private sector, or rather from the private shareholders. But we are seeing the commitment of the government and the Kenya Kwanza in terms of not just doing two, but doing four, which is really proportional to the shareholding structure of the private shareholders. Another area that they did also do, minor, is there have been a number of debts which have been accumulating over time. And these are mainly to do with operations of the last mile, where, as we talk today, we are owed under those schemes to the tune of 26 billion shillings. And it has been building over time, and it keeps building each and every other day. But there's now a very firm commitment of the government in terms of how they are going to deal with it. One of them would be paying off that loan, or paying off that debt. But the other alternative, which looks palatable and is already is being progressed, is that there are a number of loans which are what we call the online loans, which the government picked. Of course, they are extended to Kenya Power. And the conversation is, suppose this 26 billion is offset against those loans. Another initiative in that direction is also the possible sale. And indeed, we've already set out an expression where we want to value some of our assets. The idea is that if we are able to identify those assets, especially on the transmission space, because we have a sister company, Kenya Electricity Transmission Company, whose main forte is dealing with transmission lines. But as a commercial entity, we are also looking at a win-win situation where we can identify some of the assets in the transmission space. And we are looking here at the 220 kV and above. That is 220,000 volts and above. We are going to retain all our 132 kV. And we are also going to retain some of the 220 kV. The key driving factor from a commercial perspective is to identify those assets that are just enough for us to offset the online loans.
Tari, you recently just announced your results and you clearly took a hit on it. Could you kindly expound on, what this meant and the future outlook?
We did declare a net loss of 3.2 billion.
A hit here.
But if you are really to look at what caused that, we had a loss of 22 billion on Forex. So these online loans and dollar-denominated liabilities, by virtue of the Kenya shilling dropping from an exchange rate of 118 shillings, all the way to 142.
150,
It hit us 22 billion.
Absolutely.
That is to say that if those loans and those obligations were not there, we would have made a profit of 19 billion. And that is actually why this initiatives with very strong support from the government are really going to pay off in a big way.
Excellent.
Because now from the exposure that is brought about by these dollar-denominated loans, once we offset it from our books, by virtue of the government meeting its obligation, either in offsetting or paying the 26 billion shillings we are owed, and this other one of transferring some of the assets, just enough to offset the on-lend loans so that we don't have those loans in our books.
So you're very optimistic exactly. We're going to get out of this.
I'm very optimistic on that. Okay. And maybe again to assure our shareholders.
Yes.
I think many are the times that when our shareholders look at our values, they would think, and for example, when they compare it with our debts, one can be made to believe that we are not in a very good situation.
Okay.
Yes, I do want to admit that initiative alone is going to really change the landscape there. But one of the things I also want to mention here, Maina, is that for a number of our assets, we are not holding them in our books based on their value. Like if we mention electricity house, in our books it sits at less than 1,000 shillings.
Oh.
The reason being, in the past, yes, of course, that's not.
Yes, that's not definitely, yes.
Otherwise, I could just use pocket tunes and I become the owner. Yes. or I would have encouraged you to do the same.
Absolutely.
But when you look at it, the main reason why that has remained the case minor is that we've never had any intention to dispose them.
Okay.
Of course, at any point when we need to dispose the assets, we then have to establish the market value. And that is why we do know that after I started identifying a few assets, we would actually be able to offset that the loan, and when the government pays the 26 billion, that is going to change the financial situation completely of the company.
Okay.
So, yes.
Allow me to come in now, because I think you've actually touched on one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because it's quite clear that really the exchange rate hit you hard, and that's why you had recorded that, because that was one of the concerns of what was the hit about, and you've elaborated it and even bringing out how you're going to have a turnaround.
True.
But now I'm curious as well, even as we're speaking about this, coming back to the strategy that you have launched today, one of the things that you have talked about is regarding your revenue diversification. Okay. And I'm curious to ask, how is your strategic plan intending to diversify your revenue streams, just beyond the traditional electricity provision and ensuring that you have that sustainable growth? How do you intend to do that?
There are a number of opportunities.
Yes.
By virtue of the large network that we have. We have a network of more than 300,000 kilometers. One of them is the fiber business. We are going big in terms of the fiber business. And this is so much, again, in line with supporting the Kenya Kwanza manifesto in digital transformation, where they want to achieve 100,000 kilometers of fiber. Part of that, we are going to play a big role in that. So in the fiber space, the government is committed on digital transformation. And one of the easiest ways for government to provide fiber to every home is the use of our infrastructure.
The network infrastructure.
We have a network that reaches all the homes which are electrified. And I think, as you heard even today, what the PS did say, the government commitment by 2030 to ensure that everybody is applied. So that would mean then that our network will be reaching every home. So what a better way, instead of relying on building an infrastructure to reach people, you just ride on our infrastructure. So that is a role we are also going to play, but on one side, but also be facilitative and supportive on the other side. So we would support, and indeed, actually, one of the things that we are already doing is pole leasing. Some of these fiber companies can use our poles. We also do have a role there. But another area that we could also talk about is the issue of electrical vehicles. This is an aspect that is gaining ground,
you're right.
And especially on the taxis and the buses. That is an area we really want to push, and we are indeed at the front line in terms of supporting that and working together again in terms of providing the necessary infrastructure. Because one of the questions anybody attempting to buy an electric vehicle would want to ask themselves is that, should I adopt it? Where am I going to charge my car? How available is it? Can I move in any direction? So that is an area we are working very closely with the industry to see where do they want to put this charging station.
Absolutely.
There are some we are going to put it ourselves, but more importantly, we really want to work with them in terms of establishing that. Another area that you could look at is even e-cooking. The discomfort of working in the traditional kitchens and traditional environments has not been very conducive for men. But here now is now a situation where the e-cooking devices, you can even cook even possibly in a sitting room.
Yeah.
Because there are no gases, there are no... So the environment is even going to be more conducive for men to cook.
All right, I love that, and I know there is quite a number that you could mention. It's just that time is not on our end so far. But let's talk about this other pillar, which is the customer-centric approach. And you were quite vocal in speaking that we want the customer this time around to appreciate that we are here for them. So how do you intend to plan to enhance your customer satisfaction and experience? And allow me to go a bit local because, and I think you explained it in some previous sentiments. For example, you had some court battle that delayed delivery to customers, especially in 2022.
True.
And I believe that one now, I think, is cleared up. Customers are still concerned. Are we going to be the heart of the matter for the MD and the entire KPLC?
Thank you so much, and thank you even for assisting me to answer the question. Because really, one of the key pain points of the customers was they have paid their money.
Yes.
They want to be connected like yesterday.
Absolutely.
It could be a business setup. He wants to start immediately, and there is an opportunity. But after applying for this power connection, the pain of having to wait, even after you have paid, that was really so painful. That was quite painful. And the whole issue was litigation after litigation after litigation. But I'm happy today to really announce that we have now an adequate supply of meters.
Wow.
We've used all ways which are legally allowed for us to get adequate supply of these meters. I know some comments elsewhere may not have been very kind, but the whole issue really was we needed these meters. So it was a very painful, and I really want to really apologize to the customers for that long wait that they had to wait. But possibly, before we move to something else, one of the key things that we're also doing, I think you add the slogan, smarter for better.
Smarter for better, yes.
That is another way of being customer-centric. In the past, we were depending predominantly on meter readers to go and read these meters.
Sure.
A number of challenges would occur, especially for people who do not have anyone at home. And as you heard even what the PS did say, you get a bill of 8,000 this month, 8,000 the next month, 8,000 the third month. But the fourth month now, when the meter is finally read, they find that you've actually been more units than they'd estimated. So by now going smart, nobody needs to travel to come and read your meter. So by being customer-centric, we want to protect the privacy of these customers. And also at the same time, give them the service they have always required. But another area that we are really building is the resilience of our grid. We are doing a lot of revamping, where we had rotten poles and the like, which were again partly impeded by the same procurement challenges that they had. So that you'd have rotten poles, but by virtue of the fact that you didn't have any supply, they would just rot until at times they collapse. And there was no recourse to that. But by virtue of these materials now coming, we are better able to deal with the challenges in our network in terms of revamping them, in terms of introducing new substations. Because one of the challenges that we do have minor is that when the government committed itself, and we really want to laud them for this, that they have to connect as many customers as possible. It was a rapid process to the extent that, yes, in the manner that we did it, we really needed to connect them. But some of the lines we ended up having very long feeders. And indeed, if you even look at the losses that we are encountering in our network, a number of it actually is by virtue of the expansive network that we have at low voltage. In electricity, where you are really moving a lot of power, you should move it at the highest voltages. But in Kenya, we have a very short high voltage, only less than 10,000, and the rest is lower voltages, which is really bringing about all these losses. So we are shortening, and the way we shorten it, we introduce new substations. We also push the transmission space to introduce new transmission lines. And indeed, one of the conversations that we are even engaging, even our sector players, is the speed at which we can roll out transmission lines. And you see, in the past, we've had to depend so much in steel towers for transmission level voltages. But what we are already engaging the sector, and I'm very happy at the positive response that we are getting, is that we can now start using concrete poles in rolling out the network for 132 kilovolts. What that would give us gains in minor is that we can do it for a price of less, because we are using concrete poles. Number one, possibly 70 or 80% of the materials are local because concrete, cement is here.
It's available.
Still, we have steel manufacturers within the country.
Yeah.
And once we've rolled out, and again, the capacity to build these lines is available locally.
Yeah.
The L&T contractors are well able to do it. So we see a situation where if we adopt that, and that is really the strategy we are pushing, we can roll out a lot of transmission lines, which can then even reduce much further the losses that we are currently encountering by virtue of the very expansive LV and MV network. So those are some of the strategies that we are putting in place, pushing in, and also the interconnection with our neighbors. We are already interconnected with, of course, the first one to be interconnected was, of course, Uganda in the 1950s. I know that was many years before you were born. Yes. But the most recent that we interconnected with is Ethiopia. And we are already bringing a lot of power there. Another interconnection which is soon to be completed, and indeed we were in Arusha the other day, discussing with TANESCO, which is our sister country, on, the moment that this line between Isinya and Arusha is completed. We foresee a situation where we can do a power exchange between our countries.
And as we come to a close, I would like you to mention these two things, because at least you have addressed the sustainability and climate change mitigations in your conversation, and we applaud you for those steps, and really this is where the globe is moving to. The last question that I would want you to address is on matters to do with the customer and what we have been seeing as what I would call them as negative sentiments. One of it being, sometimes we hear Kenya Power is purchasing power at quite expensive from these guys who are the private suppliers, Kengen, you have mentioned them, and so there's been a lot of discussions. You see them coming over and over. I'd like you to clear the air for the people, so that at least we can get to understand which is the big question, which Kenyans would worry about. Will the cost of power soon come down? Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maina, for really raising that. And I think the more we engage on this matter, the better it will be for the general public and for each and every person. The truth of the matter, like I know I've mentioned in the past, is that when you look at the consumption patterns of power in Kenya, it varies in the time of the day. And the lowest is from around 10 p.m. you go towards 6 a.m. The power demand is quite low.
It's low,
But overall, from 6 a.m. in the morning, it keeps rising to around an average at times of about 1,700, 1,800 megawatts. But the peak power supply which has ever been attained in Kenya is 2170 or 2169.5, if you really wanted to be precise. So we have a situation where for the better part of the day, we have about 1,800 megawatts. The moment it reaches 6 p.m., it starts rising to an high of that 2100, the 2170 being the highest. Now, in dispatching power, there are a number of parameters that we have to use. One of the parameters is what is called the take or pay. And maybe again, just allow me to explain a bit on this one, because this is one area that the public has not really understood, and you can't blame them.
Go ahead.
Blame me. Blame me in terms of not having coming out.
You have the time now.
Explain this issue. When you look at why IPPs came, they came in at a time when the government would have experienced massive load shedding. Massive load shedding. And the government, and I would want to support them, when you are in such a situation between massive load shedding and having power that is expensive, you are better off with power that is expensive. Because still, in terms of power being expensive, and even when you look at it, maybe without even sidetracking, if you look at somebody just using 5 bulbs in a house, you will be shocked at their expenditure, even if they turn the lights on the whole evening, may not even reach 300 shillings in a month. So really, it's expensive so much depending on your usage. But let me come back and say that they then needed a lot of investors.
You're right.
To invest to meet that demand.
Yes.
But in investing to meet the demand, the investor needed to know, how am I going to recover my cost? So in that recovering the cost, there then had to be a commitment from the government that I am going to take this amount of power from you. Then, of course, the investor would ask, suppose you don't need it and you say you don't want it. Then the government had to now negotiate. And in such a situation, you don't have a lot of power in negotiating because you're in a bad situation. And that is why, and indeed globally, when you really must get an investor when you need them, take or pay.
Yeah.
But where you now have abundance of generation, you can tell the person, set up your plant. I'll take it when I need it.
Yes.
But where you really need it, it is a take or pay arrangement.
You're right. You're
so
right.
we have these plants that came on that arrangement. Those are the first to be dispatched.
Okay.
And one, it really meets the doctrine or the condition they came on board.
Okay.
They did not come of their own. Of course, it was a contractual obligation.
Yeah.
They needed to meet a particular need,
sure.
and they needed to have a mechanism of recovering their investment. So those are the first to be dispatched.
Yeah.
Once you've dispatched those ones, then you now go to what is called the merit order.
Yeah.
Merit order is dispatch the lowest cost first.
Okay.
That is what you do. So after you dispatch the lowest cost, you may exhaust them. But still, the demand is there.
Yeah.
So you now start dispatching the more expensive sources.
Okay.
And indeed, I can confirm to you that by 6 p.m., 7 p.m., you've dispatched all the cheap sources.
Yes.
And my friend,
because of the demand,
unless you want to load shed some parts of the country,
yes,
you have to bring in these more expensive sources.
Okay.
And the more expensive sources that we are dealing with here is the ones that run on diesel and the GT. In fact, I think there's always been this notion, and it keeps being repeated, that Kengen is the cheapest. And I still want to repeat here that Kengen is also the most expensive. The Moroni GT, I think if you use the current conversion rate, is possibly about 70 shillings per kilowatt hour.
Wow.
70 shillings.
Okay.
So it is not so much, and this is actually one that I want to demystify.
Yes.
It's not so much the being cheap or expensive.
Okay.
It's so much to do with the source.
Okay.
That's why I mentioned to you in part of this program, the cheapest source is hydro.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, or Tanzania.
Yeah.
So when you have a lot of hydro, you know, you stand the risk of only allowing it to spill. So look at a situation where there is too much generation of hydro.
Yeah.
That is always the cheapest. Now, so in terms of, if you now compare likes for likes, and that's what I always want to encourage the public and whoever is interested.
Yeah.
If you look at hydro sources, you will realize that hydro, which are Kengen or KTDA or a number of these IPPs, are in a similar range.
Okay.
If you talk about geothermal, the cheapest source is Ocean Energy at 6.9 cents of a dollar. Indeed, it's 4.9 cents plus 2 cents. So that is the cheap. So if you compare likes for likes, if you go the thermal side, Rabai is cheaper than Kengen's. So if you go like for like, you'll actually notice that they are comparable. But more importantly, what I just wanted to say is that by virtue of that, the fact that once you've even dispatched all the cheaper sources, you'll not have met the demand, then you'll need to dispatch the other sources. And let me also mention this minor, is that at times when we look at the installed capacity in Kenya, people will always proudly tell you it's 3246. But this is based on an assumption that at times is not very correct. It's based on the assumption that all the dams are full. The truth of the matter is, until very recently, maybe this almost a month or so, the dams were in a very bad shape. To the extent that they were hardly generating. But when you look at the energy mix in Kenya, you will say 839 is from hydro. But at almost a few months ago, you would be lucky even to get 400. You would be lucky. And so are the others. But what I just want to encourage the public, possibly even as we talk about the matter, is that whenever you are dispatching thermal, one additional cost that really comes to bear is the issue of the fuel cost. And now that we have a lot of rains which are coming, that would actually mean that the hydro, like I said, generation now is going higher. And as it comes higher, then it's able to displace some of the thermals. And as it displaces it, what happens? The cost of fuel now reduces. So there's going to be definitely a relief, possibly a shilling or slightly more, by virtue of the fact that we are now dispatching, as we go forward, we are dispatching less of the fuel sources. But importantly, as we interconnect with the region, there's also the prospect that we are able to get the cheaper sources as we go along. And more importantly, the newer ones that are coming on board, they are always going to be cheaper and much cheaper than the past ones. One, because we are not willing to take any more expensive power. And the other one is technologies have improved. The cost of solar 5 years ago is not the cost of solar right now. They are much cheaper than they were 5 years ago. But on the side of the company, I really want to say that if you look at the government support, what the government has done in all this restructuring, the cabinet memo, introducing 4 new directors, which are purely, you know, in the past it was the government who was appointing one of them. The staff are very motivated in terms of rising up to the occasion and implementing the strategy that has been launched today, which has very good things in it. We are committed, and the level of commitment, more than ever, even if you are to do a survey, maybe I can challenge you to, challenge you to do that. The satisfaction survey, or rather even from staff, and I do know that as we sought, maybe I didn't mention to you that we had a backlog of about 330,000, 247,000 new connections, and about 90,000 faulty meters. But we are already upwards of 250,000. So my commitment that by the end of this month, anybody who had applied is actually going to be connected still stands. I know we are going to meet that. And the customers. Buy shares, my friend. It will never be this low.
It will never be this low.
Yes,
and you have said in one word.
Let's compare notes next year.
Absolutely.
If you don't buy now, don't come and tell me next year. Why did you insist?
And your promised power is going to come down soon.
Definitely, by virtue of dispatching less of the thermal, there's going to be.
And more of the hydro and all that. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Oh, my goodness. Dr. Siror, very passionate, and saying, listen, Kenyans, it's just a matter of time. We shall be enjoying the fruits in a better way. Thank you so much for your time, and really wishing you well in your strategy for the next 5 years. We really hope that Kenyans will be proud of that. Thank you so much. I leave you now with the markets out of this passionate interview. Asante.